Hello, everyone. Welcome back to. We got to come up
Whatever
with.
this is.
Yeah, we got to come up with some
Name.
really cool name that matches how cool we are.
I don't think that can be done.
Because we're so cool or we're so not cool.
No, it was because we're so cool.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
Go ahead.
Well, welcome back to this weird place on the internet. Continues to be so fun to hear from you. I even got a few emails this week that I haven't told Dave about yet, but yeah.
You
It's
pointed
really,
like this, like I was next to you.
you're on this side of
Okay.
me on my
I
screen.
get it.
So,
I
okay.
get it. Yeah, you're there. I get it.
Oh boy, this might be a long one. Anyways, it's so good to continue to hear from you, and this continues to resonate both with me personally, and it sounds like with a lot of you. So continue to send us whatever you're sending us and asking us questions and making fun of Dave. That's really fun. But life just keeps going on, right? We're all here. In fact, I had 3 tow trucks in my driveway today, so life's not letting up anytime soon. It's been quite an interesting week over here in our home, and I'm sure many of you are continuing to face challenges, just like we are here. Whether you're providing for a family or work or out of work, I mean, the variables are so many right now, but we want to continue talking about what's true, talking about what are the things that don't move, what are the things that remain. And Dave, it was fun to hear from you a minute ago as you were looking back on some of your old sermons about when our foundations are shaking. Places like Oklahoma City, 9/11. Yeah. And then you even came across this note about just wanting to talk to your dad, who at that point wasn't around anymore.
Right.
And that kind of just brings us back to where we are and why we're doing these conversations, which is to hear from our spiritual father. You're my literal father-in-law.
I love that.
Me too. So tell us about when foundations are shaken. No, too many jokes.
Okay. Well, it is weird. I'm surprised I didn't pull those out sooner, but they're kind of in the back of the file. But those foundations, when the foundations are shaken, was some things that I did at Oklahoma City when that happened. And I'm looking at the notes, and I'm just remembering those events, and also 9/11. And it was Psalm 11. When the foundations are shaken, what shall the righteous do? Well, they do what they always do. And what they always do all through the story is they start to remember who they are and the rock solid truth that doesn't move. And our instinct even to talk about what doesn't move when everything's moving. I mean, that's always where you go. God's people have always done that. It's just kind of fun to look back at these notes that were 20 years, whatever old. That's what we talked about. What doesn't move? And yeah, it was weird to see that note in my notes saying, I wish my dad was here. And that's the same spirit of this kind of thing. And it actually made me look at we're going to look at some stuff in James, the book of James, because he's got that same kind of vibe on him and stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, so maybe set us up in James. We had a fun joke about how someone told you you could never preach on James.
Yeah.
So what'd you do? Preach on James?
Yeah, you said that's how you get me to do it. Is tell them I can't do it. Yeah, that was years ago. There was a season at Open Door. Some of you may remember it, some of you don't. But grace for some, the message of grace was so amazing to some that obedience didn't matter. And James kind of was symbolic to a couple of people who talked to me about this of, really, then Luther thought it didn't belong in the Bible because it was somehow legalistic. And I just said, you're baloney, that isn't, we're going to preach James. And I ended up loving James, but I framed him personality wise, and it helped me kind of navigate everything he says, because he does come off a little crusty here and there. But I take him like a no-nonsense chemical dependency practitioner, who every time you come up with, your little song and dance to say, oh, I feel this, he goes, don't give me that. That's James all the way through it. It's, why is there quarrels and factions among you? And he answers his own question saying, it's because you want what you want and you're not getting what you want, and that's why, so shut up. Anyway, that's James.
No nonsense.
Yeah, I know, yeah. It's a great book. But anyway, I would set this up because there is, one of the things we've talked about is that all these stories where what we're going through it feels really unprecedented to us, but it's incredible how the stories in the scriptures are almost always in this context of some sort of suffering, of some sort of difficulty, and how the fact, if somebody who's never suffered starts giving us advice, it's hard to take. It's like, have you ever had a headache? Anything worse? But if someone knows how to go through that kind of stuff with integrity and faith, that's really interesting. And James was the pastor of the Jerusalem church when he wrote the epistle. And but he was, if you remember the story of Jerusalem in Acts chapter 8, the church in Jerusalem was dispersed. The persecution from Saul was ravaging the churches, was before he became Paul, and they had to run for their lives. And so he's writing to people who've lost everything. They've lost their homes, they've lost their security. And so the things he's saying to them about suffering and trials, they're in the middle of them. So there's that credibility, that kind of thing. And again, there's this sense, I just can't help but notice, we did this a couple of other times ago, when this is like Pentecost now is a long time ago. I mean, at Pentecost, expectations were high. Everyone was feeling a sense of awe. 3,000, the wind of God was blowing, 3,000 came to faith in one day. And you're just going to have an expectation that it's going to keep going like that. So whatever else they're dealing with, it's the loss of all of that. And James comes along in James 1, verse 2 and says, verse 2, consider it all joy. Put it in the column that you consider joy when you meet the kind of trials you're in right now. And if, like, my first reaction until you get into it a little bit is like, well, thanks a lot. That's great advice. I just be happy. And, but then he talks about why that would be a good thing. He talks about endurance and letting that have its perfect result, because you'll be complete and perfect, lacking nothing, but you'd have to care about things like character for that to have that work. But then in chapter 1, verse 12, and this is what I want to talk about today, he says, blessed are you when through adversity you persevere, when through adversity you don't quit, when you easily could quit. Blessed are you for perseverance. And then he uses this phrase, you will receive the crown of life. And I know what the crown of life is, I think. I remember teaching that and going, oh, geez, what is that, a spiritual reward? Is that something you get in heaven? We talk about getting your crown. We have any stars in your crown? And I think I know what the crown of life is, and it's not any ethereal, mystical thing. I think it's very human. And I saw it today or this week. And that's why I want to talk about this. It was, I don't know what day it was, but there was a picture in the paper of the XL Energy guys had driven a whole bunch of their trucks to, I think it was Abbott Northwestern, doesn't matter, big hospital someplace, lined the streets with their big honking trucks, got out, and all these nurses and medical care professionals came out in their gowns and in their masks, and they just put up these signs that said thank you. They started cheering for them. And in the paper, even, there was one or two of the nurses were wiping away tears. And that there's something inbred. It's instinctive in us when we see someone who's going through things and they're just hanging in there, that we just go, crown of life for you, crown of life for you. And
it's not because they're winning.
No, that's one of the big deals. When to really get the thing of perseverance, it isn't the crown of life isn't because you won. In fact, it's almost part of, you kind of need to not be the winner to get this one, because I'm not saying winning is easy, it's not, but it's the person who didn't quit that gets this crown, that gets this sense of, good for you, daggone it, raise the glass, crown of life for you. I think the classic story, well, I love the one with the healthcare professionals right now. I think crown of life for them right now. I mean, people are going to work and putting themselves at risk for other people. Crown of life. I mean, that's what that is. And I just love how human that is. I feel like when we're in places like that, you're in church.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may be outside the hospital and cheering for some, but the other story that I loved is very first is the 1984 Olympics in California. It was the first time that women were allowed to run a marathon in the Olympics. And so there was a lot of stuff about, can they really do it and all this kind of stuff, and are they tough enough, and a lot of that stuff around that. And there's a gal named Gabriella Anderson. She was from Switzerland. And what's weird is, however many years ago, 84, that's a long time ago, the story people remember is this one, not who won. We can look up who won. But it was that about 20 miles in, she started getting cramps. She was paying so much attention how her body felt that she ran by the last place she could have gotten some water, something like that. And so she finishes dead last. In fact, she doesn't, she comes into the stadium, the Coliseum, 20 minutes after the race is over. The whole race is over. She comes in 20 minutes after, and she's barely on her feet. I just saw the video again. I looked at it just before this, and she's kind of walking like this. She can't walk a straight line. She's going back and forth like that. And everybody's just kind of looking at her at first, wondering what's going on here. There were people walking next to her to catch her if she fell, and she was kind of doing this narrative that she was speaking over this, because she was talking about it later, that I just didn't want to, if I sat down, if I stopped, it would be over. So she just kept walking this crazy line. Then she crosses the finish line 20 minutes after the end of the race. And the whole place is, the closer she got, they started standing. Everybody's standing. They start to cheer. People are crying like me. Crown of life, crown of life. She gets the crown of life. Nobody said crown of life. That's what that was, though. And so it had nothing to do with winning. It wasn't, not only did she not win, she didn't come close to winning. But she didn't quit when she could have, and maybe should have. And the crown of life for you. That's what that is. And again, I think we're on holy ground. And it's such huge stuff. There's things that, like what we're going through now, difficulties in general, often call this out of us. Like we didn't even know we had that kind of grit. And so sometimes things like this call it out. And I think I love that. The other thing is that it's already there, and difficult circumstances just reveal it. I mean, no, it was always in there. There are people who fold real easy, and the heat reveals that too. But it's just a fascinating thing how these are kind of things when you think about what are the things that I want to teach my kid. Well, I hope they win some stuff, but they're not gonna. It'd be great if you learn how to stick with something. I remember when I was a kid in grade school, I was a fat little kid. I was not very athletic. That came later when I became quite the, amazing. But whenever, and I think this is pretty normal for a kid, whenever I was faced with something athletically or gym, climb a rope, even in school, if I didn't think I could be good at it, and maybe it's about being embarrassed, I don't know, I just wouldn't even try. I would act like I didn't care. I wouldn't try. And what's weird about that, well, it's just being a kid. But what's weird about it is that the very thing that might have helped me get better at it, which would have been to stick with it, is the one thing I just wouldn't do. And so you're never going to learn how to persevere if you're not okay with losing once in a while. Anyway, so that was just this thing I remember, but something clicked somewhere along the line. And obviously these switches don't get flipped and boom, the light comes on. There's just things you learn. You grow up and stuff like that. But I realized I'm never going to be the biggest, the fastest, or best at anything. I mean, there's always going to be somebody bigger, faster, better, smarter. I'm never going to be that guy. So there will be certain things that I will never be able to do that the best, biggest, fastest, smartest are able to do. I'll never be able to do it. What I'll always be able to do, though, is stay. I can do that every time. Stick with it. I can do that every time. I love this phrase about giving it your best shot. Here's the deal. Sometimes our best shot is not enough. As a parent, okay, there are single parents. There's parents who are together. You take your best shot, and here's the deal. It's not always enough. Your best shot, I could shoot the basketball a whole bunch of times, take my best shot, and it'll go in 3 times. But what I can do every time is take my shot. I can do that every time. I just think that's the spirit behind this. And when you're around that, take your best shot, it's not always enough, but you can always give it crown of life toward that. And I don't know, I think what's weird is, I think it's worth talking about during this, because it is during seasons like this, I already said this, stuff like this gets called out of us. It gets built into, so one way it is kind of, we just have to step up to something we didn't have to do before, but it also can just reveal what's already there. And that's now we're getting a little closer to why James would dare to say something like, stick this stuff in the joy column, because there's something about endurance that can't be developed any other way but when you're in a tough place. In fact, that's what he says, consider joy, because the trial produces endurance, and endurance, faith, and blah, blah, blah. And it's proven character and stuff like that. So anyway.
So we have something to grab onto right now that James kind of, I don't know if I picture James kind of throwing it back in our face. Like, you kind of give us this picture that he's a little sassy. Yeah. Or crusty, or, which I don't know. I like a little sassiness.
I like that. I like that spin of it. Like, you guys, it's a good thing like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. People get away with that when they love you.
Yeah.
It's like a football coach. Dude, no, it's a good thing you broke your leg. Not a problem.
Yeah.
No.
Crown of life for you. Yeah, crown of life for you.
Yeah. I think another thing that I remember drawing from this, and I think it's a good practical word for something like this. And Annika, you kind of allude to this from time to time when the kids are all over and they're not, they're just, life is weird right now with everybody around, and you don't want to turn your computer around so we can see the mess right in your house. anyway.
Or see my bleached out yoga pants that I'm in right now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really huge and this is where perseverance is part of the deal, that wanting to quit, whatever it is, and quitting are not the same. You can want to quit. It's okay. I don't mind it when people call me and they I'm done. Okay. Wanting to quit and quitting are not the same. So if you want to quit, you haven't failed. And it's not about winning. It's about staying. I can't tell you how much encouragement I take, I hope you do too, from the fact that in the garden, before Jesus went to the cross, he went to the Father and says, if there's any way to let this cup pass, I don't want to do this thing. He didn't have to want to. You don't have to want to. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't want to, or if you even want to quit, just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. And that's, again, I love that Jesus thing when he says, Father, if there's a way to let this cup pass, let it pass. And basically what God says is, no, because like all the time, the only way out is through the cross. And so he did. He didn't win. again, like winning. I mean, he died, he rose. I get that part, but this is blessed crown of life for you. And anyway,
And we've actually decided, it's a perfect segue into what we've decided. So a little, carrot to wave out there in front of all of our listeners about that. What we're going to talk about next is expectations. And even persevering does not give us the right to winning. And what the idea that we can start to look at. So what are we expecting? And
well, I think one
the
of the
crown of
reasons,
life is not a medal, right?
no,
It might mean new life. It might mean new growth. It might mean a joy that you've never experienced before. But we can count on suffering. We can count on pain. And we can count on a God that works through
yep.
all that.
Yep, absolutely. I think one of the things too, and that's why I want to talk about it next time, is that expectations often have an effect on whether you persevere. Because I love to ask this phrase, like, what were you expecting? When I think of the disciples' life, when they were sitting on the hillside, listening to Jesus, the ministry had just begun, and he's teaching the Beatitudes, and he had just said, "Come follow me," and they all began to follow him. So this is fresh, okay? What were they expecting? I wonder what they were expecting. And I wonder if they knew how much they'd suffer, because they did. And the thing is, we find ourselves ill prepared for suffering if our expectations were that we wouldn't, and that God would somehow, give us a pass. And it's what drives me a little crazy from messages you hear in certain places that seem to promise that if you pray a prayer a certain way and if you have the right kind of faith, you're going to be healthy, wealthy, wise, and those are your expectations. You develop an expectation around what I can expect God to do or not do. And if it's that you'll never have trouble, which he never said, you're probably not in it for the long haul. And so I think that's another part of so we'll talk about that a little bit more next time. What were you expecting? I mean, because it fits everything. And when I see Bonnie and me, 47 years ago, standing at an altar going, I do, and we meant it, I'm staying. Nobody, well, what were you expecting? I mean, I was expecting, anyway, expectations are a big deal. So.
Huge.
What I was expecting, no, I have a joke in there somewhere.
Why is that a joke in there somewhere?
Yeah. She was expecting, wonderful mess, and she pretty much got what she wanted. So, okay.
She's gonna kill you.
No. Okay, I'm done.
Thanks, everyone. Leave us a comment, send us an email. Again, these are also on YouTube, so I will post that link in the comments if that is more your style, or if you'd like to share it with someone. I know these videos get lost in Facebook sometimes. So thanks again, and we will see you again in a couple days. Bye.
Bye.